Chapter 2, Mishnah 3. The Mishnah identifies which parts of a person's hands is subject to the rabbinic decree of Tumah of the hands, and to the mitzvah of Netilas Yadayim. Hands become Tameh and become Tahor from their Tumah through Netilas Yadayim up to the joint. Anything beyond the joint is not regarded as the hand, and the rabbis did not include that area in their decree. How is this so? What are some applications of the above rule? The Mishnah first illustrates the rule that Tumah of the hands extends only until the joint. Someone poured the first waters until the joint of his hand as required, and none of the water went beyond the joint. But when he poured the second waters over his hand, some of that water went beyond the joint. The person then lowered his hand, and the second waters returned to the hand below the joint. In this case, his hand is tahor. Since the unrinsed area beyond the joint is not subject to the tumah of the hands, the second waters that went there did not become tameh. Therefore, even if the second waters return to the hand will remain tahor. The Mishnah now illustrates the rule that hands become tahor only until the joint. Someone poured the first waters and the second waters over his hand, and both waters went beyond the joint. The person then lowered his hand, and the mixture of the two waters returned to the hand below the joint. In this case, the hand is tameh, since the second waters cannot purify the first waters that passed the joint. When these tameh waters return to the hand, they make the hand tameh. The Mishnah presents two related rulings. Someone poured the first waters over his one hand and then over his other hand, and he then changed his mind about rinsing his hands separately, and he asked someone to pour the second waters on both of his hands, and he held them together. The hands are tameh in this case, although the hands become tahor when they were initially washed with the first waters themselves remain tameh. And when the two hands were joined before the second waters were poured, the water on each hand made the other hand tameh. Since his hands are now tameh again, he needs a new netilas yadayim. He must therefore dry his hands and start again. Conversely, if someone poured the first waters over his two hands at once, and he then changed his mind and poured the second waters first on one hand and then on the other, each hand of his is tahor, although each hand touched the other hand. While they were washed the first time, they did not become tameh from each other. This is because when two hands are held together to be washed at one time, they are viewed as a single unit. The tameh first waters on one hand therefore do not transmit tumah to the other hand. The Mishnah discusses the status of hands that were dried on various objects. If someone washed one hand with first waters and then he rubbed it on the other unwashed hand, the washed hand becomes tameh from the unwashed hand. But if he wiped the washed hand on his head or on the wall to dry it, the hand is tahor because the head and wall are not tameh. The Mishnah ruled above that when the mayim rishonim are poured over a person's two hands that are held together, the netilah is effective. It now discusses a similar case where several people brought their hands together for netilah. 4 or 5 people may rinse their hands at the same time from the same netilah, if they position their hands side by side or one above the other, and another person pours the water over their hands because all the hands being washed together are viewed as a single unit. This is true only if they loosen their hands so that the water can go between them. If they press their hands together tightly, the water will not be able to reach some parts of their hands, and the netilah would not be valid.